Hello everyone, welcome to the God Stack. This is a new day, and today we will go back to the API. We will keep doing the API. Let me just make it bigger. There we go. Well,
Hello, guys.
hello Bruno, welcome you too. How are you? How's your week? How was your weekend?
It's a
How's your
hard
work?
week, but tomorrow it's holiday here in Brazil, so it's fine. I will rest tomorrow.
Yeah. And we have a joke in Platinus because we have a schema, something that you just put how was your day, and if it's a bad one you put red, if a normal one you put yellow, and if it is a good one you just put it a green one. And when we look to the Bruno, it's always green, he's always happy. So he's the happiest guy
Always happy.
at Platinus. Everyone in the chat, first of all, let me see who's with us. We have Daniel Hart. Welcome, Daniel Hart, to the live stream. Actually, Daniel Hart, it's a really good streamer. So, guys, please just go to his channel. He's a real good one. You should go there. So, Grand Dev, welcome, Rudy. Chirael, Andy, Nextus, Bruno, a lot of people today. We have a lot of guys here. Vinicius, hello everyone. So, what for today? In the last parts of our, let me go to the code. There we go, and let me just improve his. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, we are getting.
Can
Oh,
you send me the invite to the live chat? Yes.
oh yeah. I can do that. Let me just do that because I don't want quick setup. I
If
need
you don't
to
have it,
set up. Yes, because I've changed my
yeah, just
computer.
share the screen. Just share the
Yeah, I
screen.
will share the screen with you. It's better. I just changed my computer. It's a new one, and I don't have the things set up there. So let's just go
It's
to
fine. It's fine.
the Discord. Where's Discord? No, this is no, there we go. I'm gonna share my screen with you. It's gonna be applications, and I believe there's gonna be this one. No. Can you see it, Bruno?
Yeah,
Can you see it? Yeah. Nice.
we do.
So, we need to do some steps back, and we are starting the stream, so I need to explain you some things that we have here around the code. First of all, this is an API. We are using Graphql, and we are using Apollo as a handler to the Graphql. We are using Node.js. So, some people say, but you're using Node.js and all that, JavaScript. Don't worry. Don't really worry, because the God stack, it's not about the language or anything. It's about the engineering, and it's about you on the other side. So the God stack, it's not a language, it's not a code, it's not a standard. The God stack, it's you. It's you on the other side. This is the person that it's about the God stack. So what I'm trying to do, I'm here with Bruno. Bruno is a mid software engineer. I'm senior software engineer, and I'm trying to explain him all the structure of a code of engineering. So what we are discussing here, we are creating software, but what we are doing is step by step creating all the engineering and thinking about that. In the last seasons of our software development, what we worked with was we did all the infrastructure of our code. So we are using Docker, and this Docker can be used with any language you want. For example, Daniel Hart, he uses PHP. He could simply just get the Docker Compose that I have from the Docker Compose local and use it. We have a Traffic as a reverse prox. We have Postgres as a database, and we have a API in Node.js. He would just change some informations here, maybe add some environment variables, and maybe use some different port or something like that. But I'm a software developer, and I worked with PHP as well, and I've used the same infrastructure for PHP. So if anyone comes from the PHP, feel free to use that. I've used the same infrastructure with Python, so this is gonna work with Python as well. So just use it if you want to. And we have some bash scripts to install everything that we want. So in development server we use this one, in production server we can use this one. It's gonna be, we will improve that a lot, so don't worry about it. And well, all these things are going to be really improved, and we have all the environmental variables. And about today, what are we gonna do today? Today we will work with the schemas, right? We already mounted our server. We have some things configured here, so we already have some shared that we created some kind of core. It's gonna be improved with this live today. So all the server, it's already done. We have all the interfaces, all the infrastructure, everything, it's ready to go. So today we are going to work with the infrastructure. As I told you before in the last seasons, what I'm doing here, it's work with some kind of domain-driven design. I'm not getting all the concept. Again, you should really read the book. It's a real good book. I'm just working with the layers of domain-driven design. And the layers that, if you read the book, you're going to see there, you have the viewport. That's the SPA. We're not going to work it now. We're going to do that in the future. We're going to use React to do that. So the same way that we are doing here with the backend, doing every file, every line by line, and explaining what everything inside the code, we are going to do exactly the same thing with React in the front end. But right now we are kind of ignoring this layer, and we are going to the next three layers that's important in domain-driven design. It's the application, where we have all the business logic of your API. The domain, it's the data layer where you explain how your data is. So we will understand this better today. And the infrastructure, that's the layer responsible for getting data from some kind of backend, connecting to a external service, and well, you can save files, whatever it's not business logic, whatever it's not data layer where you're trying to modeling it all, it's gonna be inside the infrastructure. And again, if we are working with GraphQL, everything starts in the context. Okay, so everything starts here, and the object that it's returned by the context will be used in every request we have. We talked about that in the other lives. You can go there and see, I've explained line by line what we are doing here. So feel free to go there and do it. Bruno, how do you feel until now? Is it everything ready for you? Do you
ready to go.
Ready to
Let's
go?
do it.
That is really nice. Let's do it. Okay, so if the context is the first thing that it's going to receive when you do an HTTP to the backend and HTTP request to the backend, the context is the first thing that you can receive. The second thing that it's going to be mounted, it's the schema. and we are using the make executable schema that comes from the GraphQL tools to union the type defs and the resolvers for us. Okay, again, the type defs is just a string, and in the type defs we have all the data description, but we don't want to do that just in one file. We need to get small pieces of files around to group that and make it more understandable. Okay, so and the resolvers are the functions that you have that's going to explain how you get your data. And one of the things that we have when we were talking about it, it's the types of the GraphQL. So again, if we have a user, this user have an ID, email, and password. When I do that in GraphQL, I'm not actually saying that email it is a string. What we are saying is that we have email. Email it's a scalar type. I'm sorry, email it's a variable from user, and it's going to return a string, because I can use the email to pass any information. For example, as we did in the last lives that we have, we can just use it as a parameter and pass something like, for example, upper. And upper is gonna be a boolean. Boolean. There we go. So what does this mean? This means that I can pass some information to email and I can work with it, and what I need to do is to answer as a response a string. So it's not that email is a string, but email returns a string. That's the idea when we are working with GraphQL. I'm explaining my data to anyone that's it's looking at this. Nice. So what we're gonna do now, we're going to get all this and create a real user that we use, because in the last actually in the last one we created all the migrations. We understood how to use Next.js. We discussed about RIMs and query builders and why we would use query builders and all of that. So we have our triggers, everything it's on type. So let me just get the user at it is, and I will explain a little bit of that. So there it is. So I have my user. My user is gonna have an ID. Again, in a few moments we will look at the user, and the user in the front end, it's gonna be cached. The user in the backend, it's gonna be cached. So we will have cache about this user everywhere. And we have a special type in GraphQL called ID, that if you use this ID, when you change something in GraphQL, you're not actually changing the user, but you are changing something that points to this user. And the way that GraphQL finds to get this user, it's this ID. So it's one of the most important things when you are working with GraphQL. You create for every domain you have, for every type you have, you create an ID. The type it's ID, and in the future when we see that working in React in the front end, you're gonna see that's really incredible how the cache works. Okay, so I have my user, and I need to create, as we saw in the migrations, we have two different types that's gonna be used here. Again, the chaining in GraphQL, it's a very important concept. So when you have a chain, that means that you can solve a type inside the type. And when you get it from a scale point, you can get all the types that's related to the type that's in question. For example, the name is a string, so it's directly. When we call name, it's gonna returns directly in a string. When you call picture, it's gonna returns directly a string. But the thing is, when you get whole, what you need to answer the response of your request, it's gonna be a whole. Okay. So what's a whole? A whole, it's a type. You can have strings, you can have booleans, you can have IDs, but you can have types that you've created. And that's what we've done here. I've created a type called whole, and this whole, we are going to, the response of that is going to be an ID, and string, and permissions, it's going to be another type, and permissions and all that. So what I've created here was the chains, okay? And I'm going to have a query here. There we go. Let me just get this and put here. What is this? Duplicate export. Do I have another one? No. I believe that's just a cache something. If I just delete it, do I have another one?
I think you're exporting twice because you have exported.
Yeah. I don't need these because I can just export everything. So I can just do okay, you can still do that. It's better. Yeah. So the query. What's a query when we're talking about GraphQL? A query is the way you use to fetch data in the backend. So you have queries and you have mutations. What's the mutations about? Mutations is when we want to try to change things in the backend. Okay, so if you want to change anything, you just use the mutations. And I'm going to get let me see, this one. Just this one, and then the future I get the other ones. Okay, and as you can see, I'm doing here user queries. User queries gonna fetch for user. We are going to get the user by ID. We can get the users by deleted, and then can paginate the users. And the answer of this query, it's gonna be an array of users. Okay, if we want to answer just one user, we just do that. But we want an array of users, we just do the array of users, and we will be ready to go. If we were talking about the CRUD, like create, read, update, and delete users in the backend, but if we were working with GraphQL, instead of just create, well, because when you're working with REST, you would use a put, you would use a post, you use a get, you use different HTTP verbs to do things differently in the backend. But for the GraphQL, we just have post. There is nothing else than post. So you can just get one resource to do everything that you want to. Some people talk to me about, hey, but do you know the solid principles, the clean code and all that? Yes, I know. I've read the book and all of that. But you will understand why I will use the the update, the delete, and the create, update, and the delete. I just going to use one resource to do that for us. And in order to do that, I need to pass an ID, if I want to delete it or not, and the user data. How do I do that? How do I pass the user data? We are going to need the user inputs to do that. So when I do the user data, I'm saying that the user data is this type, but it's not exactly a type because I'm just passing information to the backend. So when I do that, I can create, instead of creating a type, I can create an input to do that for us. So input user data field, and then this user data field will have name, picture, email, username, and password. there is a little bit of trick here, because when you do the user data field, I'm not doing that. What does that mean in GraphQL? That means that this is mandatory. So you are obligated to pass this information. I'm saying that it's not mandatory. Okay? So what's mandatory? If you pass this one, that's not mandatory, but if you pass this one, this will be mandatory, this will be these informations will be mandatory. This one is not going to be. So you don't need to pass it. But if you do, if you pass, it's mandatory to pass the things that's inside. Did you get it, Bruno?
Yes, I get it. When we have when you have this, we need to return or receive some kind of what you are declaring to return or send it or receive.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So the user data, this is the type of the user data. And again, this type is
Yes.
not mandatory. So I don't need to send it to the backend. But if I do, this is going to be mandatory. This is the idea. Okay?
If I say that is mandatory, oh, okay, I can specify for each of them what I want to be mandatory. Okay, nice.
Nice. This is really perfect. So let's keep going. Okay, so I believe that I have everything that I need to do that if we're talking about the type devs. So what we're going to do, we're going to import the things that it's not here yet. So we're going to import the user mutations, we're going to get the chains, and we're going to get the inputs. Okay, so the queries will be inside the queries, and this means, of course, that the mutations, it's going to be inside the mutations. Okay, so as this is just a string, I just put in there, so user mutations. Nice. And we still need to put inside of the type devs the inputs. So it's going to be the last thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to do it here, user inputs. All right. And the other thing that we need to do here, it's the chaining. So let's do that. So this, every time you work with it, it's gonna be exactly the same thing. You're gonna put the domain here, the chains here, the queries inside the queries, the mutations inside the mutations, and the inputs in the end. That's everything that you need in order for this to work. Okay. Another thing that I want to do, if you take a look closely to that, you will see that you have the pagination. So I don't have the type pagination in here. So where does this come from? What I'm going to do in order to do that, I'm going to create inside the God stack schema. I'm going to create a new folder, and this new folder, we are going to call it the definitions. Okay. Inside the definitions, what we're going to do, it's to create. Let's create here a new file and call it paginations.js. So this is kind of global types. Okay. Right now we are just going to have the pagination here. So there you go. I have an input called pagination that has offset and limit. So I can use it everywhere. How do I do that? I simply import it. Let's just do that first. So import something from. Let's get it. It's going to be called definitions paginations.js. There we go. So paginations. Oh, paginations. Yes. And then I'm gonna get these And as this is an input, let's put the pagination in the top, in the bottom of our file. So the pagination, it's very simple. We just have offset and limit. The same way I did with this one. This means that when I call user data, I can pass name, picture, password, and all. I can do exactly the same thing with pagination. So when I call this, it's gonna be this type. This type is just offset and limit. It's an integer, so you can make it global. So everyone has access to pagination now. Every domain that we have, pagination is global for everyone. So it's gonna be like that, the way we're going to do that. Okay, nice. So our all the type devs, it's ready to go. So if we just go make our, let me see if there's anything running. It's there. So docker compose, we need to go to the API. It's still cleaning. Again, this command, you will not find this command in Docker. What I did, I've created this command into my user local bin. So if you go to the user local bin, you can create, if you're using Linux or Mac OS, you can create inside this folder any command, and this command will be global for everything. So I just created the clean here, and what the clean does is docker stop, docker ps -a-q. So stop all the containers and remove all the containers. I do that in order to avoid caching. So sometimes you just do docker compose app, another docker compose app, it gets caches between them. In order to avoid that, I just created this command, and this command just helped me to clean everything first. So let's do the docker compose app, and everything's going to go. Nope, I need to go inside API. Docker compose app, and there we go. Everything is working. If you're curious how oh, there is an error. Let's see what's going on. Parents defined but never use it. Because we are doing the linting in the assemble process that we have, isn't it? So I'm just going to ignore it right now, and then do the clean and docker compose up. There you go. So we have our API here. Let's just get these, and let's go to the browser and use that. There you go, local TDS. Okay. If you're curious how we are doing that, using API as a name, it's because we are using a reverse proxy to do the things for us. So this reverse proxy is in the Docker Compose local. This is our Docker Compose, and we are using Traffic as a reverse proxy. And the other thing that you need to do in order to that works, again, you need to sudo vi. You need to update this file. That's etc hosts. When you go inside, as you can see, I have the TGS here pointing to my own machine. When I change the hosts file, what it does, when you call the API local TGS whatever, it's going to point it to your own machine. In your own machine, you have the Docker is running, and the Traffic, it's the reverse proxy that works with it. So actually, when you call API local tgs.com, what's going to do actually, it's going to go back to the Docker, and using this Traffic, I have all the hosts set it in here. So I have my API URL here, and this is how it's working. We explained that some sessions behind. It's right there. You can just
one of the first.
I believe that was the second one.
Yeah, the second.
Nice. So, well, it's all working. Let's just see if we have queries here. So let's fetch for queries. So In queries we have users, nice, and the mutations. Let's see the mutations that we have, don't we? Oh yeah, because I didn't do the resolvers. So inside the resolvers we just have queries. If we have the queries, let me just change something. I don't remember how to remove these things. It was in the preference settings and here, and then we have the file. I don't remember anymore, so don't worry, we're gonna use that. I hate these things that VS Code does, and well, I don't know if anybody in the chat remembers by the mind.
I will look up here.
Yeah.
A second.
It is because it's very difficult to work with that. Let me remember where I have a have it somehow GitHub. Sign up, not this one. Let's do this one, GitHub, and
try in the preferences
yeah.
settings. It's not in the JSON file, but I think it should
okay, no problem.
work.
Yeah.
Settings and explore compact folders.
Compact folders. Windows
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
this one.
yeah. I think it's that.
It's enabled because it's don't save. So let's do that. Beautiful. Oh,
nice.
yeah. When you change a computer, there's so many things that you need to configure that every time. Yeah. Every time you have these kind of things. Okay. So we have the queries. So we already have the users. So this is the first one that we're going to do. So in order to do that, we need to connect to the backend. Okay. Right now we are getting the user from the infrastructure. Okay. Just like that. But I don't actually want to do that in that way. So what I'm going to do, we have the parents. I'm not going to use the parents, and I'm going to return it. It's just a query, so I'm not going to do any kind of authorization and authentication right now. We're gonna do that in a moment. So read users. Let's create some function called read users, and we are going to pass the context. Again, if you don't remember what's the context, if you go to the server, the object that the server returns, let me just create a console log here in order to make everything stop getting these warning errors. Okay, so everything that's returned by the context methods in the Apollo server, these exactly objects, it's what's inside of this guy. So all the functions for the GraphQL has these three things. The parent, we will talk about that, but it's the domain itself, the parameters of our request. The parameters, it's everything that's inside these. So in this case, it's going to be this one. So I have these parameters, everything is going to be here. And the context, again, it's what's in the server. So this object that's returned, it's the context, okay? And I'm going to pass the context to a function that will be in the infrastructure. So let's create it, new file, and let's create the read users.js. Okay, nice. So in the infrastructure, I'm going to get the read users, and I've already had it here. I'm just going to paste it here, and then now I'm going to explain you what's going on here. So as you can see it here, I hate that I'm using the okay. So let's get it from read users.js, and I'm going to get it. Let me just do it. There you go. So I'm just going to do the red users. There you go. What's is declared but spellers never use? What? Our users. Nice. So what is this function is doing? I have the context. If you remember in the last thing that we did, we get everything from shared plus some I don't need test, and I have a user with new ID right now. Okay, what's the shared? The shared it's this folder that we have here. Inside the shared I have the database, and the database is connected to the database, so everything is connected here. I'm using Next.js, and Next.js I'm getting the library of these, so I have all the connections set up, and the Docker it's passing me all the environment variables. So everything is set up. So when I do here context.database, what I'm actually accessing it's this object. And why I'm doing that? Because in my server I'm returning everything from shared. Can you see that all these things are connected now? Okay, this is how this thing is gonna be here. So it's context database. It's gonna call next. Bruno, do you have any things to say?
No, I was just saying that that's nice because all the things that we need will be forwarded through the context to all the functions that we have.
Yeah. Some time ago, when I was teaching about that for some people in a company, some person asked me if this was injection, and this is not injection, because when we are talking about injection, we are inside a context. So we are talking about object-oriented programming, and when you say injection, you have the reverse calling the methods. You need all the classes and all of that. So I know that what we are doing here, we are injecting the context in all the functions that we have. But I'm really want to avoid the word injection because it has some properties and ownership that I don't want to use here right now. Okay, so let's just call it contexting. It's a better idea right now. So if you have in your mind the injection idea, this is functional programming. So let's call it contexting. There is no book that you will read that there is contexting saying there, but between us here, to avoid the word injection because it's in the object-oriented word, let's call it contexting. So what's contexting? It's when you create a context and every function that you has that same context. This is contexting. All right? Maybe I will write a book about that. Maybe. If I have time to do that. Okay. So, context database next. It's going to get information from the table users, and I'm going to call it as U. So, it's going to be an U. So, u.id as you have an underscore here, ID. Why I'm using the underscore? Again, because when I get the information and respond this information, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that in a table way, because the database gives me the information in a kind of a table, but I want to change it into a JSON to send to my client, to send the response to my client. The one that's going to do that, it's the next nest. Okay, and I've explained it about next nest in the last live. But again, the next nest gets something that's a table and transform it into a JSON object. In order to do that, you need these underscore in front of every name you've got. Okay, so I'm going to call u.id, that's a column in my table, as a underscore id, underscore name, underscore all the things. Okay, where I don't have the username system and migrations. Why I'm avoiding the system and migrations? When I've got the database, when we've created the database, it's not this one, there we go, the database, let's connect to it. So Postgres, down, it's really a new one. I don't even have the Postgres installed here. So pglocal.tgs.com. The database, it's the God stack. Password, I don't remember the password. Let's get it from the .env. Password, beautiful password. Let's test the connection. Connected, so let's do that. So I have these public tables. There we go. So every time I start up my system, I create two users. The first one is the system, because it's the system itself, and the other one it's a migration. So everything that's done by migration, it's going to get this user ID, and everything that's made by the system itself, it's going to use this ID. We use that because we want to audit the information. I believe that right now in Brazil, the law that protects the user data, it's getting strong. Here in Europe, this is real strong. So you need to protect your system. You're not protecting your system against the law. You're making your system be according to the law. So that's what we're doing. So if the system changes anything inside my database, I want this user to be responsible for that. So it's going to be traceable. Okay. This is the reason I've created this one. In the migration, again, last lives, I explained everything about that. Nice. So we're not in, so the username should not be system or migration. So all the other users, I'm just going to return to whatever person it's asking for me. This SQL, if I pass the ID, where does this come from? Again, it's come from here. So I have in the parameters of my request, I have ID, deleted, and pagination. Okay, so if I'm passing that ID, SQL, where UID, it's like the ID. Okay, if I'm passing the deleted, this means that I want to get all the deleted users in my system. This system will work with both of strategies, the soft delete strategy and the hard delete strategy. When do we use the soft delete? In the everyday business of our things, we just do the soft delete. What's a soft delete? You don't actually delete the user, but you flag the user in the database. That's user, it's deleted. So we have, if you take a look at the migration, the users, we have something here, deleted by and deleted at. When these flags are set, this means that this user is deleted. But the user keeps this information into the database. When we are going to delete it? Well, according to the laws of the data users protection, you need to do that if the users asks you to do that, openly do that. So he says, hey, I don't want my data to be there anymore. So what's the next thing anyone should do when a user requires your system to be terminated? Every sensible information should be deleted. What does that mean? Well, for example, if we have this kind of information, the name should be deleted, the picture should be deleted, the email should be deleted, the username and password should be deleted. The approval token needs, we're gonna understand that in a moment, but it's gonna be deleted as well. But you don't need to delete, for example, the ID that references to that user. So your system can keeps working, but all the information that's sensible should be deleted. So if I have someone recorded in our database that it's me, for example, my name is Breno, I have 38 years old, and I'm male, and I live in Lisbon. I can keep the ID, and I can keep that's a male, and I can keep that lives in Lisbon. But I cannot keep my name, my ID record number. I cannot keep these kind of things. Did you get it, Bruno?
Yes, I got it.
So this is something that people are still discussing because this is one of the things that happens, for example, with Facebook. When you delete your Facebook, I did that, for example. I don't have any kind of social media. I don't have Instagram, don't have Facebook, don't have Twitter. I've never had Instagram, actually. I've never had Twitter. I've never had, God forsaken me, but I've never had TikTok or anything like that. But Facebook in 2010, from 2013, I've had Facebook, and I required them to delete it. So they will actually keep my data like an ID. They know that I'm a male, that in that time I was living in Spain, for example, and I know the ID, this one, but they delete, I believe, they, yeah, yeah. I asked, and I believe that they deleted all my data, my photographs and everything from Facebook. I believe. I don't know. So this is what these things are all about, and we are going to use the soft to delete. If when anyone in the chat has any doubt about it, just asks me, and well, I would try to do my best. Okay. If anyone pass the pagination and pass the pagination limit, what are we going to do? We're going to use the pagination limit. If they do not do that, we are going to give just the first 100 users. We are not going to get more than that. Because if we don't do the limit, you're just going to get all the things that's in the database and send it to the client. This is not actually a good idea. Of course, the client can use the limit to do like 99.9999 and get all the information. Yes, he can actually do that. But if you have a client doing that, you should do something in order to prevent it. But right now, we're not going to think about that. And of course, the offset, if the offset is passed, it's going to be the offset. If it's not, it's going to be 0. Okay. What's going to be returned? It's going to be returned the next nest. So the next nest is going to be the one responsible to execute our SQL. All right. Then it's going to return the data just the way it is. Why is it going to return the data just the way it is? Because again, I trust that the next nest is going to change the table information into the JSON, and it's going to send it back. If any errors occurs, we're going to create an error object. We're going to get the message. We're going to get the hint that the database gives us. And we need to create the error handling into the context core. Do we have this one? We don't, so we need to create it. So let's do that. Again, everything that comes from the context can be put inside the shared folder. Okay, so let's do that. Inside of the shared code folder, we are going to create another folder called core. So everything that's kind of utils that can be used all around and spread it all around our API, not just the HTTP interface, the HTTP protocol interface, but can be the command interface, it can be the workers interface. We're going to do all of that. So we can put it here and we can use that, okay? So I'm just going to get the error handling, okay? So let me just copy from here and paste it here. There we go, error handling. What does an error handling do? It receives a message, a code, and an error. And it's going to instantiate Apollo error, passing the message, code, and error, okay? Of course, if you are working with any kind of logging or anything, you can do the logging first and then throw an exception, okay? Just remember, when a Apollo error it's called, in that very point, everything stops. Why do I need to explain that? When we are working with functional language, because JavaScript is functional, it's not object-oriented. When we are working with functional languages, sometimes you have a function calling a function, and instead of that, you have 3 different functions being called, and it's like a lot of functions being called. This is really a stop everything. Everything that's running in this exactly moment, it's gonna be stopped, and Apollo it's gonna to return an error to the person that asks it. So the person that requested the information is going to receive back this error. So please keep that in your mind. If you call an Apollo error, in this very moment the system stops. So let's just try to understand what's going on here. So I'm doing the database. This database is calling this Next.js function. Inside of that you have another SQL that has this function, this function, this function. It's all functions. Yeah, it's functional programming, so everything is function. And you have the then and you have the catch. I've created an object error. There we go. Stop it. It's not going to pass from this point. So why do I have this return? Do you know, Bruno? Why do I have this return? If everything stops here and it's not going on to the next step, why do we have this here?
That's a good question, because if everything stops there, it should return the error object, right?
Yes, but there is always a but. You know, when we are talking about the software development, there is always a but. And the but
maybe you should use another word.
yeah, the but. I'm so always thinking about a but. But if you are in a serverless server, it's required to return things. If you don't return things in a serverless, the function will be running inside the serverless forever, and you're gonna pay a lot for that.
You explained that and I forgot.
Yes. Exactly. So if you are working with functional programming, doesn't matter what you do, always return. even if you know that the code it's not going to run in the next step, return things. This is very important. If you forget any returning and you go to the serverless servers, and we will do that in the next slides. We're gonna get there. You will see that the function it's there, just running, and generating more expenses for you. So in the end of the month, the bill that you have to pay is gonna be a real big one. So take real care. Oh, we have string elements now. That's it's beautiful. Hello, Guy. How are you, Guilherme? He works with us at Platinus. Welcome to the stream. So, any doubt about what is happening here, Bruno?
No.
Let me just
clear.
Do that.
Very nice.
So it's just step by step. Okay. So when we return, if we're talking about functional programming, if I return these and this function returns whatever this function returns, so what this function it's actually returning, it's this return. Okay, so that's how functional programming works. You call something that calls another thing. The last one returning something, it's going to be the return for everyone. And as you can see, this function will be called by the Apollo, and what this function returns, Apollo will return as well. So I like to say that functional programming, it's just like the anime One Piece. When the guy from One Piece gets into a nice island, it does not go directly to the boss and ends the episode. What it does is it's talk to the first person, and then that first person talks about a history. Inside of the history, there is another people talking about any other things, and then go, and then in the end, these people back to this guy. He goes into the last the boss. Sometimes doesn't kill the boss, but and then goes back to the ship and goes to the next one. This is exactly what functional programming looks like. So you get into the users calls read users. The read users will call the next. Next we call select. We call we're not in, whatever. And then it's going to be called the next nest. Next nest is going to pass all these functions that we called. The return of everything is going to be returned to this guy. It's going to process it, create a JSON, and then this data as data JSON is going to be returned. So in the end, this guy is going to return a JSON. This function is going to return a JSON. So as this function is going to return this function, everybody returns JSON to the top. So you go, and then you back, and I believe that's kind of simple, but you need to get used to that. When you are in the object-oriented world, it's kind of that, but you have class and methods and some extend some classes. So you need to understand who extends who, and who's the parent, who's the child, and all that. So in order to understand what the response will be. And in the functional, it's just like going deep, and then you go back. It's just a straight flow. You can actually see all the things happening, I believe. I don't know if it's that simple for everyone. So what I'm going to do here, I've created the core, but I'm going to create an index file here. It's going to be my index.js, and the error handling, it's exporting this as an object. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do export everything from my error handling file. Okay, and as I have the core and I will have these when I need to get the thing that it's in there. So import everything as core from core, and as I'm in the backend, I need to make everything really explicit. So even if I have a index.js, I need to explicitly say that it's from this file. I'm using type modules. Just explain what these. So I'm using typed module. In order to use that, you need to make the path complete. Okay, so I'm just going to put the core here. So now I have the core in the shared. Okay, when I go to the interfaces and when I go to my server, I have the shared. As I'm spreading the shared into the context, what's going to happen? I'm going to spread the core and the database here. And now this thing is gonna work. Okay, so I have inside the context, I have the core, error handling, and everything is going to actually work. And did I forget anything? I believe not. Let me just do something here like query user called. Okay, let's test it. It's gonna be a query. Okay, and we're going to call users, and let's just get the ID back. Database. So what was the error? Relation users does not exist. No, it actually does. Select select UID from kind of person from here, you, where you, username, not in that.
I'm not seeing the. I can't see because it's really small. Yeah, now it's better.
Is it? It's in database.
I'm just seeing one screen. Just the VS Code in the squad. Username does not exist. What?
Relation uses as you. The users, it's here. Did I connect it properly? Let me get the database here. So, there you go. It's not DB database. It's DB. I forgot, but I believe that's DB name. Let's get from the Docker Compose. Yes, it's DB name. This is what happened. So let's make everything goes down. Make sure that I've saved the file. Let's let's make it everything goes up and see migrations development already up to date. It's good. Seems good. Okay, so let's do it again. There we go. Perfect. So the users, it's returning new. Okay, so because I don't have any user in my database, I will stop using the Apollo playground. Okay, I know that I have the docs here with all the information and all, but again, we need to get a little bit more professional. Let me see. There is a question in the chat. Do you think WSL2 it's good for backend? This is one of the things that I like to say a lot. it's never about a language, it's never about a technology. You can use PHP, you can use Node.js, you can use Scala, Java, you can use WSLL2, you can use whatever you want. The thing is, how much do you, as a software developer, understands about that technology? How much can you get from that? This is the most important thing. So I've saw in my life people doing things with PHP that was amazing. They've created products that you just look to the product and say, my God, this is really amazing. And when you saw it, it's because they used very, 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 very good engineering. They did that the best way possible, using PHP, using Node.js, using Java, using the things. So uh, this is my concept as a senior developer. At some point, forget about trying to understand if the technology is good or not, if the language is good or not. Make you the good one. Make the engineering the good one. And this is what we're talking about, the God stack. The God stack is not the language, it's not the technology. The God stack is the person. It's a joke about the full stack idea. The God stack is the person that understands the backend, the front end, the DevOps, the database, the mobile, and everything. So improve yourself. If you want to use WSLL2 for the backend, use it. But if you're going to use it, study it. You know, study it a lot and understand why should you use that, and use it in the proper way, in the better way possible. For example, one of the mistakes, not exactly mistakes, okay, but from my point of view, one of the mistakes that people do using JavaScript, they try to make it object oriented, and it's not object oriented, it's functional. And when you get something that's functional and try to make it object oriented, you're gonna get everything that's wrong. That's not wrong, but everything that's a problem in the object oriented world, and put inside a world that has its own problems. That it's the functional programming world. So now you have two different problems to solve. So this is from my point of view, and again, I'm not right or wrong, I just have my point of view. From my point of view, I believe that do that, it's not a good idea. You can have better engineering process. So again, it's not the technology. Don't worry about the technology. If you want to use that and somehow you think that's good, what I have to say to you is use it. Read the manual. Go to the website and read everything. We read people in the forums talking about it. Understand the concept, why you're going to use that, why you're not going to use that. Let me give you another engineering example. There are some concepts called MVC, model, view, and controller. And one of the technologies I'm seeing exploding in the world of development, JavaScript at least, it's the Next.js. Okay, what does the Next.js do? It creates a kind of backend that's running and creating the front end for you, and giving the HTML already compiled to when you call some routes or anything like that. This concept, it's the same concept that we have in the past. It was the MVC context. So when you
Concept.
concept, thank you. when you call the backend, what does mean model view controller? When you call the backend, you're gonna hit the controller, and the controller you're gonna have all the business logic of your application, and then the business logic will call the modeling, and the modeling will be responsible to save files, to get information from the database or whatever, and then it's going to return this information to the controller. The controller is going to get that and pass it to the view. The view will arrange this information and make it a visible HTML, and or you can use it as a JSON as well, but in that moment in the time I've started to develop software in 2005, in that moment we return an HTML. I've used Cake PHP a lot in that moment, so we just return the HTML. Okay, so when you call a route in the backend, just like users list, it's going to give you back all the users in a ready-made HTML. It's here. You don't have to process anything. There is no JavaScript to run and creates anything for you. With the time, that gets a lot for a backend. The backend, the API, is responsible for a lot of things. So a lot of layers, it's here. So you have the view part layers, you have the infrastructure, you have the modeling, you have everything in that. So people start to say, hey, let's get the front end, that's the view part of our engineering, and let's separate it. Let's create something to do that. That's in the moment that the SPAs, just like React, Vue.js, Angular, and all these there was others in the past, but nowadays this is the most important one. They started to get famous. So what is doing? You're separating these things. Now you have the front end, now you have the back end. So at some point in the past, everybody was full stack, and now you can separate it, and people can get specialized. So you can understand everything from the front end. You can get the best development schemas from the back end, and now you can concentrate into the back end, and you can understand everything. You can connect to the database, and you don't need to think about for example, with a backend, you don't need to think about the CSS and things like that. Okay, but the problem is you have the routing process, and you have in the front end, you have JavaScript doing everything for you. So when you access a route, you're not going to the backend to ask for something. For example, when you are using React and you do tgs.com/user/lists, you are not going to the server, to the backend, and require the users list. What you are actually doing, it's asking for the JavaScript that is in your browser to get that information for you. So the JavaScript can call anything in the backend. This is a problem because when you are processing it, everything that tries to read your page, it's not going to receive anything back. It's just going to receive a blank page. Because in React, the HTML in the public folder, it's just empty HTML. Just an HTML with one div, that's the app div. So that's what the robots around the internet it's going to get. And this is a problem. Why? Well, have you ever heard about the 3 seconds rules? What's the 3 seconds rules? People say that you need it's required just 3 seconds for someone to leave your website. This is something that people say. So if you access to a website and it takes more than 3 seconds to access the site, someone will just leave the website. This is not actually true. This was created because the robots from Google, from Microsoft, from Facebook, and whatever, they have a 3 seconds timeout when they want to read your website. So if you have a React with a JavaScript running there, it will have just 3 seconds to produce a HTML to give it to the robot. If it takes more than 3 seconds, the robot is just going to go and say it's timeout, this website's not working. So the page rank is not going to be good. What people tried to do, for example, one of the things, you have Gatsby, you have Nodejs, you have a lot of these things. What they are trying to do is when these robots call, it's not going to call the front end. It's going to call the backend. The backend is going to process and gives it back the HTML ready to go. So actually what you're doing, you are going back to the MVC. See, this is the process of the word. You're going forward and then you go back, and then you go forward and then you go back. So again, you need to understand the engineering. You need to understand the word to use the technologies. So should I use Next.js? Should I use React? Should I use this or that? I believe that the first thing, as a God stack, as a person that knows backend, frontend, infrastructure and all, is to understand all the word. This takes time. What I'm trying to do here is to get you there faster. I'm trying to make you go faster and understand all the technologies. So what I need to say to you is thank you for your question. It was a really, really, really good question. And I believe that we're going to have a lot of questions like that in the future. Just asking, is this technology good? And my answer will always be, are you good? Do you understand the technology? That's the principle. You can use Node.js, Java, Scala, whatever. If you are good, the technology, it's going to be the best that you could ever do. And your client, it's going to be really satisfied. The company that work, the people that work with you is going to be really satisfied. It's not the technology, it's you. So if you're gonna, if you want to use anything, use it. It's there for us. We just need ownership of the things. So owns it. If you want to use WSL2, use it, but owns it. Read the manual. Be the the master of that, and the technology is gonna be real good one, the best technology that you could ever use for the backend.
That is the open source word, right? That I think I think every technology was made for a purpose. So if you do your research and put in the appropriate places, it will be good.
Yeah, and most of the juniors and most of the internees and some of the mids that ask me, should I learn this language or that? In the end, what this person is really asking me is, will I be employed if I learn that? Because learn something, you can spend a lot of time learning something, and you don't want to be a waste of time in the end. So some people was fearless when we fearless not they fear when they ask me, should I learn Rusty, should I learn Java, should I learn that? And what I'm saying is, do that. Go and learn Java, go and learn Rust, but be the best. That's what it's going to keep you employed, working for the best companies that exists in the world. You can work for Google knowing JavaScript. It's completely possible. It's not the language, it's you. Going back to what we were doing. So this is working. So we need to create a user. Okay. So let's do that. Inside the application, we are going to create a new folder called Mutations. Okay. Mutations is the folder that's responsible for changing the user's information. Okay. So what I'm going to do this time, I'm not going to. Let's create a new file. Merge user. Merge user .js. Okay. It's we call in the GraphQL world, we call this 1-2-1. So if I have one mutation called merge user, I will need one mutation called merge user to solve my problem. So let's do that. Okay. When we do the mutation, we can pass the ID, the deleted, and all the data information. And how are we going to work with merge? The merge is going to be like that. If I just pass the user data, I'm creating a user. If I pass an ID, I want to update a user. And if I pass an ID and I delete it, I want to delete the user. So this is what we're going to do now. So I have the params here, but I'm not going to call it directly. I'm just going to do that and destructure it. Okay. And the first thing that we need to do is, are you trying to delete and are you not trying to delete? Okay. Well, if you're not trying to delete, I need to check if you were passing the ID. So if you were passing the ID, what I'm going to return, it's going to be an update user. Okay, so I need to create a function called update, and then I need to pass the context, because inside the context we have the database. I need to pass the ID and the user data. Okay, well, as I did the return here, I don't need to do an else. Why I don't need to do an else? Because the return is going to stop this function right in this position. It's going to return. So I'm just going to return here a create user. Okay, and for the create user, I'm going to pass the context. Okay, and I'm going to pass here. I just can pass it directly, the user data. Okay, and of course, if the person is not trying to delete, it's going to be update or create. But if the person is trying to delete it, we need to check if the person is giving us an ID. If the person is giving us an ID, we're going to return a delete user. Delete user. And what we need to pass, just the context and the ID. Okay? If the person made some mistakes, for example, it passed the flag deleted, but didn't pass the ID, I can't delete it, so I'm just going to return a no. Right? So I'm just going to say, hey, I'm not, I can't respond and can't do anything. Of course, you could do something like the error handling. We could use the let me just get it from here, copy. This is Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V orientation. Well, we could do that. Error handling. So we are here in the merge user. There was an error in the we can say params. Okay, there was an error in the params. So we're gonna call it params error, and we are not going to say anything. And again, return no. There you go. So I'm just alerting the user, you did something wrong. So please make it better. Okay. So what we actually need now is to import all the things from the from the infrastructure folder. Okay, so let's do it one by one. So the first one, new file, it's gonna be the create user.js. Okay, I would just create all of them because I want these errors to disappear. So let's do that. New file, update user.js, and new file, it's gonna be this one. So infrastructure, new file, delete user.js. Okay. Let's start with the create user. Okay, there we go. Of course, I have these things here. Let me think the best way because there's a lot of things here. Okay, let's just do that more simply. Okay, so I have these, and what I need to do is to get these, the catch, and all. Okay. So I'm going to return it right away. So let's check here. Okay. I'm not going to do none of these. I'm gonna do that in the future. I don't need that. The whole ID, it's gonna be something. I don't want to think about that right now. So just going to add some things here. It's need a ID, isn't it? Yeah. So let's just get from the seeds here. This is role, this is public user, this permission, role permission. Where's the users? Do I have the users? Oh, I can get from the database. Okay, I'll just get the system ID and use it in the I will explain you why I'm doing that. Again, we need the whole ID. Let's get the whole, and everybody's going to be a regular user. Okay, we're going to force it right now, but in the future we're going to improve it. And let's import red users from, we already have the red users set up, so let's just do that. Nice. Okay, so let's check what's happening here. This function, it's gonna get the database users again, so it's gonna be context database next, and then the user, right? And then we are going to insert the data in there. We are going to get the data from the user data. Of course, we could destructure it, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, in order to see better the data. Okay, because if I, for example, destruct the name, so I'm going to use the name just like that, and sometimes this gets a little bit confusing. So you say, hey, where does the name come from? And then you need to understand that came from here, and you are doing something like that, and you don't want to do that, so you just do that. So in order to make it a little better visible, I just did that. I kept the user data, and I'm just doing user data.name just to make it the visual of the things better. I'm just going to, I'm not going to have approval token right now. Let's call it 000. This one can be just like that. There is a question, and what do you think about Windows versus Linux for dev? What do I think about Windows versus Linux for dev? I'm actually using Linux. There are a lot of things in server side that it doesn't matter if you use Windows or Linux, but in the end of the day, it will be required for you to understand the Linux word, because most probably your software will be running into a Linux server. So even if you're using the Windows, I would say study the Linux, study at least the basics of the Linux, because it's gonna be really, really, really important for you as a software developer. Uh, Windows has its own beneficial things, uh, but again, as a software developer, you should be the owner of the knowledge of everything that surrounds technology. I don't use Windows since 2003, I believe. I started into Kurumin Linux. That's a Brazilian Linux. I started there. That was my first contact with Linux word, and I've passed through a moment changing. And 2005 6, I started to use different distributions. I've used Debian. I've used well, lot of different ones, and I've never go back. What I'm saying that it's not mandatory for you to use Linux, but it's mandatory for you as a software developer to at least understand and comprehend what's going on about Linux, because all the servers around the world, not all of them, I'm sorry, it was a mistake, most of them are Linux. So it's very important for software developers. So do that. Understand Linux, and even if you want to use Windows, use it, but you need to understand Linux. It's gonna be mandatory. Mac OS, the base of Mac OS, it's Unix. So if you understand Linux, you will understand the Mac OS as well, at least the terminal. So again, it's really good for you as a software developer, as engineer, to understand the Linux world. Going back, let's me get okay. So this is the reason I didn't destructure all that. So it's just going to insert it, and as you can see here, it's going to return the ID. Okay. So what it's doing here, I'm just going to read the users. So first I create the user. If everything's okay, I'm going to call the read user function to read the user for me, and I'm going to pass the ID. As I'm saying that I need the ID back, and this function always returns for me an array of IDs. I just wanted the first one because I just inserting one user. If I was inserting more than one, you could get the 0, 1, 2, 3, but I can just force the 0 to return the information for me. So the ID is going to be here, and then I'm going to pass to the read user. So look how beautiful that is. You're going to call this function. This function, it's going to call the create user. The create user, it's going to do its job. In the end, it's going to call the read user. The read user function, it's going to do whatever it's do, and in the end, it's going to return a data. This returned data, it's going to be returned to the create. The create user, it's going to return these, and it's going to return it to here, and then it's going to return to Apollo, and Apollo is going to return the JSON to whatever call it. Okay, so call, and go back. Deep.
Since
Back.
you're returning the ID, wouldn't it be better to return all the user data that we put in the database?
Yes, I will do that with this one, with the read users.
But the next function does not do that for us already. Because I saw that you were returning the ID, right?
Yeah, the insert
Okay.
function will return just the ID.
It can't returning anything else.
Yes, it can, but I don't want to do it here. I have a proper function to do that for me, because I always want to return the same thing, the same kind of data. So I'm just going to concentrate the returning of a
Responsibility.
user, yes, the responsibility to return a user for one function. So, for example, if I want to, I don't want to return the picture anymore. Okay.
Okay.
So if I get this information and return this information, and in the future I just want to change it, I need to change it in two different files. But if in the end of the process I just get the ID and get a function that does that for me, I just change one function and everyone is going to be changed by that.
Yeah. And the connects nest is also treating the information, right? So it's
Exactly,
better.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So you will just concentrate the read users in just one place, okay?
Okay. Got it.
Nice. And now we have the catch, of course. And there are some errors that the database can answer for us. So if the database says that the user's email should be unique, we are going to do the error handling for that. So I'm going to say that I'm in the create user file. There is already a user with this email and then a code for that. And then again, error handling, create user. There's already a user with the user's name. Username should be unique. And if it's a general error, I'm going to create an object, an error handling for that, and then create. It's the file create user. There's an error in the database, and it's gonna be a general database error. We are doing that because we want to make the life of the front end a better word. And actually, we can do even better. What we're gonna do in the server, you have the schema and you have the context. But there is another thing here that we can use, that's the format error object. Okay? So this is the answer. If anything enters here, it's going to go out from here. So the response, it's gonna be the format error, but just the response when an error happens. And what am I gonna do? I'm gonna do that. Look at that. And this is the moment that the front-end people is gonna go to the backend and it's gonna hug you and say, thank you very much for that. You are an amazing person. I love you people from the backend. And when you do that, what I'm doing here in this error, well, I'm getting the error. What I'm doing, I'm just deleting all the stack trace, because, well, in the front end, they kind of don't care for all the stack trace information, this file, that file error, and then you have all this information. What actually the front end people they really like, it's something that's always the same. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to create an object called error log. This error log object, it's gonna have always the same thing: the message, the code, the detail, and the path. Okay? The message, it's, for example, this thing. This is the message. Okay? Where's the server? Here it is. The code, it's gonna be just like this one. It's all together, separated by the underscore. It's called sneak case. Okay, nice. And I will have the detail of this error. Right now, we don't have the detail, but for example, here you're gonna get the detail in this. You're gonna get the detail in this object. Okay, and the path. Okay, the path is gonna be what you called. You called merge. You called create. You called users list. You called whatever. So this is gonna be the path. I'm going to do a console error, okay? So it's going to appear in the console, and we will talk about it in a moment. I'm going to use the color red to do that in the console. So every time an error happens in the API, it's going to be printed as red. This is the red color for error. And then I'm going to get this information that is just an S. I don't remember why did I put an S here, but okay. Well, so it's going to be an error in the server, and then I'm going to stringify this object, and this is going to appear in the console log. Why do I do that? Some people just ask me, why do you use the console log to put the things in there? Because when you go live, you can get some heartbeats to heartbeat in the console and get that information and process it. There's a lot of softwares that do that. I'm just trying to remember the name of software that does that. It's what's the name of that? It is Kibana. Kibana, it's one of the softwares that can ping into your server console. Of course, it needs to give permissions to that, but it does, like we say, heartbeats. So from time to time, it pings in the console and get all the information, process it, and creates a beautiful dashboard with all the information that's needed. It can send emails and it can do a lot of things. So Kibana is one of the softwares, but there is a lot of others. So I keep doing the console log thing, even when I'm go live into production, because I can use this kind of software. Again, if you like logging, like a real one with, I know people that use files to log things. You can use any logging thing here. So you just get this object and log it. So it's concentrated here. All the errors, if any error happens in your API for any reason, it's going to hit here, right? So create a user, okay? We need to do the update user. So let me just get to the update user from here. Let's see if it's a good one. Yes, seems to be a good one. Read user, it's going to get this information. I don't have that right now, so I'm just going to pass for now, we are just going to pass the password, and I will think about that in a moment. Okay, so the update, it's going to be easy. It's going to get the table. It's going to update now the information. That where, don't do update without where, it's not Friday. If it's Friday, you can update without where, but it's not Friday. We're going to use the ID here. Then if everything it's good, you just do the read users, passing the contacts again, and the ID, you're going to receive the ID from this function. If any error happens, if it's because the mail should be unique, the user should be unique, or any general error, it's going to be treated here. Again, the error will come here, and we will see what happens. Okay, so let's do that. And the last one that we need to do, it's the delete user. So let's get the delete user, and as you will see, the delete user, it's a function that will update the database. So it's a soft delete. It's not deleting anything. It's just updating these two things. Okay, and of course the user that's in the context will be the one that deletes my user. Right now we are not working with logged in users, so the ID is just new. we will mock these right now, but we will improve that. So let's get these, and let's say that's the second. Let's just get an UUID here, and let's go back to that. Let's see if, there we go, the choose.js, and everything seems to be working. What we need to do now, go to the resolvers, okay, and import, and then we import from, let's get from users, applications, mutations, merge user.js, and let's get the, it's default. I didn't do the default here, why? We should create a, what's the best one? Let's think. This function is always, it's better export to default, because the function is always returning just one thing. So I'm just going to change this, and I'm just going to delete it. Okay, good. Of course it's gonna break, because the users should be now default instead of a named export. So we're going to get these. We are going to create a mutation, okay, and then this mutation object is gonna receive this one. Let's just check in the type defs. We called it mutations, but it's mutation, okay. It's 1-to-1, so if I create a type mutation here, I need to create a mutation here as well, the same way we did here. So if this is a capital M, we need to do the capital M the same way in the resolvers. Seems to be working. Let's check that mutations, and let's see if I need to reload this one. Yes, there you go. So we have the merge use. So the thing is, I'm not going to use the web browser anymore. What I'm going to bring to you, the Insomnia. Okay. I already created a workspace for Insomnia into the TGS. How do I do that? You just click on the dashboard, and you go here, create design document, and then you create TGS, and here we go. Okay, so inside of that, I'm going to create a new folder called users. Okay, and inside the users folder, I'm going to create a request called users. Okay, it's gonna be a post, because GraphQL is always post. It's not actually always post, but let's keep that in mind. It's always post, okay? It's not always, but well, it's always post. And we need to pass the URL. So let's get it from here. It's API local TTS. Nice. So let's do the http http.hps.com. There we go. And then you can just refresh the schema, and you're gonna get all the information that just like you have in the Apollo. It's really small, isn't it? How do I let me improve it for you? Zoom in, control equal, perfect. Let's perfect. I believe that people from, let me see, yeah, they can see it.
No, it's a lot better.
Yeah, mutation. So well, it's users. So it's used as a query. You don't need to put the name. So let's just do the users. So you can pass an ID if you want to. It's going to be in string. You can pass delete it. Delete it's going to be a boolean. So it's true or false. Let's pass false for now. And then you have the pagination. If you want to pass some pagination, you can pass this like 1, and limit it's gonna be 1, offset is 0. Yeah, and then you can get what you want back. So everything that's inside the parentheses, it's gonna be what you're going to send to the backend, and everything that's inside this one is gonna be what you receive back. So I'm just going to get picture name, email, username, and if it's deleted or not. Just right now, I just don't want to pass anything to the users right now, so I'm just going to comment it, and there we go. It's going to return a null for me just right now. So let's create another thing, another request here called merge user. Okay, and then the merge user is gonna be a post again. It's gonna be a GraphQL query. Okay, there we go. So when it's mutation, it's mandatory to start with mutation. So let's do that, mutation, and okay, I need to get the this thing from here. Okay, and then let's refresh the schema, and then there we go. We have the merge user. Okay, and when we do the merge user, let's just copy from here because it's faster. Let's get this information and then let's put it into here. Okay, and then of course I can pass the ID. It's gonna be a string. If I want, if I want to delete, my God, what? It's the white one. Yeah. So if I want to delete it or not, I don't want to delete it. And of course, the user data, and the user data needs to pass a name. That's going to be string, a picture. That's going to be a string, a email. That's going to be a string, a username. That's going to be string, a password. That's going to be a string. Okay. Perfect. I'm not going to pass these right now. Okay, I'm just going to pass this kind of information because I just wanted to create a user. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually change this for create user. Okay, the name I give in the Insomnia is one. The name it's in the backend it's another one, and you start to understand the magic of GraphQL and why it's so beautiful. So let's create a name. Let's get my name. So it's gp some site.com/brandon.jpg. Let's choose this one. Email, it's gonna be my email. There you go. Username, it's gonna be this one, and password, let's gonna use this one, and let's check for the bugs. Cannot read property strong of undefined. It's in the
I think you have a method that is to encrypt the password that don't exist in the core.
Yeah. Let's see that. So it's gonna be infrastructure create user. Yeah, this one. We will get that in a minute. So let's just check it. There we go. The user is created. Okay, let's check the database if it's there. There you go. My user created in database, and let's try to list the users. There we go. My user is there. Beautiful, isn't it? Really good.
Really nice.
Really nice. There's a lot of things we need to do, and we will talk about that. Authorization and authentication and all of that we will do, but right now this is what we got. So let's
just a second, guys.
Yeah. What I wanted to do, as you saw, I'm always copying this kind of information, and I want to make it standard, because if somehow I want to change it, I want to change it in one place and change for everything. I'm going to use the environment. So let me copy this one, and let's just do the managing environment. Okay, I'm just going to create a sub environment here. So it's going to be called environment, and I'm going to call it local. Okay, so when I'm fetching information from the local server, it's going to be this one. So I'm going to create a API URL URL, URL, and it's gonna be just like that. Okay, I'm gonna save it. Done. There you go. And then I'm going to use the environment just like it is. Use local. Now, instead of using this thing, I can just do that. So I can, what? Yeah. You just click here, do the control space, and it's gonna list everything for you. You just can get the first one, API URL. And you can just refresh the schema. It's gonna work exactly the same way, as you can see. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So control space, it's gonna list everything for you. You just get the purple one. There you go. The purple one. If I try to do that, look, this is really good. This is another thing that is a real long discussion. I don't want to do that real long discussion, but let's think for that. Let's think a little bit for a moment. One of the things that people talk about GraphQL, it's this thing that people say that this is a problem. As you can see, we had an error, okay, and the GraphQL returned for us a 200 status, and inside the payload there is the error. So when you are working with GraphQL, it's always going to return for you a 200, and unless it's of course a server error, the server just crashed for something, it's going to return a 500, but it's always going to return for you a 200. Is it right or is it wrong? What do you think, Bruno?
Personally, I think that in some way we have to know what is happening, and sometimes just the error code, it's not clear to us. So I prefer to have a clear error message, a clear error object, instead of just have a code, right? Because when I have the object and I have the message, I know exactly what is wrong with my backend, what is wrong, about what I send to the backend. So I prefer the error object, but I know that I know the concern, the people concerned about the error code, but I think the main purpose is to the developer know what is wrong with the backend. So I prefer to have a clear code, a clear object of error.
It's a real it's a real good answer. I'm just going to go a little bit deeper because again we are in the God stack and we need to understand some kind of the concept. So I'm just going to go a little bit deeper, and I'm just going to click in the header. Okay. Well, there's some concepts that I believe that people make some confusions, and they did that in the time. Okay. So when we are talking about HTTP protocol, okay, so the HTTP protocol, the 200, this is from my point of view, the 200, it's an HTTP protocol answer, okay. So the HTTP protocol, it's the transport, okay. So imagine that you ask for food on Uber Eats, okay, and then you have the delivery guy. He is just like our HTTP protocol, so he's the guy that's transporting anything. So all the codes from the HTTP protocol, it's about this guy. My house, it's the server. I am the server. Okay, when the guy goes from the restaurant, get my order, so he's in the client, getting the request. So he's going to run all the streets. If he has any kind of problems with that, with this kind of movement, it's going to use some codes. It's the HTTP codes, 200, 400. So, for example, if it gets to my house, it's a 200. If it couldn't get to my house, it's a 400, 404, I believe. So if it gets to my house, but my house it's restricted for some fire or anything, it's gonna go back with a 500. So the code, it's about the transport. If the guy gets the food and delivers the food to me, and I have a problem with the food, he's not the one responsible to give a code back. This is not the responsibility of this guy. So I'm not going to say to this guy, hey, I have a problem. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get the package, write something inside the package saying, I don't like this food, give it back to the guy and say, hey, give it back to the restaurant. So when the guy goes back to the restaurant's gonna say, have you did your job? The guy's gonna say, I did. I get this and I went to the person that needs to get my order. The person gets my order. I have some thoughts about that. I'm not the one responsible to understand what the person that received my order, to if it like it or not, or if it's good, if it's hot, if it's not. I just the messenger. The guy delivering things, he's just the messenger. So he's going to go back and say, hey, I did, and here is the answer that the person give me. Here's the thing, here's the package. The person is going to open the package, so the delivery is giving back a 200 and say, I did my job. And the protocol did its job, so it's 200. What the problem was with the person creating it and the backend processing it. But the transport was okay. The transport was a 200 okay. And this is my point of view. And this is how you use the HTTP protocol and the messages of the HTTP protocol. The errors of validation, some data, the data is not valid. The data is not properly configured. You didn't send me any token or whatever. It's not responsibility from the transporter. It's responsibility from the backend, responsibility from the front end, and they need to solve the problem somehow. It's not the transporter that needs to solve the problem. This is my way of thinking about this 200 in GraphQL. So I believe that GraphQL is doing a real good job when you go to the backend and there's an error and then you receive a JSON back with the errors. There we go. You have an error. Okay. Now the front end is going to treat it. It has the code. It has all the information that's needed in order to treat this error. I'm not giving you back any data from the merge user because the user was not merged, but I'm giving you the error. I can check the error if there is any. I don't know if I explain it well. I did.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. Makes total sense because because we are the protocol is delivering while we ask it to him to deliver. So just a little noisy here, but no. The problem was the client who sent the user data sent something that is not capable to be inserted to the database. So this email should not be the same that we received before. So it's a mistake from the client. So he's saying, I'm delivering what you asked me to deliver. And the backend says, It's not a valid data, so makes a total sense. But the message is delivered, so that's why the
Yes, it's the
200 code.
I've done my job.
I've done my job.
I've done my
Right,
job. The 200 is
perfect.
I've done my job. If you
Yes,
didn't and or the client or the server didn't, not my problem.
I
I've
rushed my
transported,
hands.
yes, I've transported the message back and forward, you know? And if there is anything problem you need to solve by yourself, I can transport again if you want to. So the user, I'm just going to get the user ID, that's this one, okay? And I'm going to update the information. So I'm just going to put a number 2 here, number 2 here, number 2, 2, and 2. So I'm just going to update all the information. Look, I've created another call to the backend called update user, but I'm going to use merge user again. But this time I'm just going to pass the ID. So let me just delete this information from here because it's not needed. And the update. So I'm just going to use uh, the same entry point, the same GraphQL I have that I have before, but now passing an ID and see what's happened. There you go. It's changed everything for me. Changes the name, the picture, the email, the user, and let's fetch for this information. There you go. It's all changed. Hey, let's talk about something. Look at that. 3.6 milliseconds to fetch the information. Of course, there's just one and it's locally and all of that. But when we put that into production, we will do some loading tests and see what happens with this. Again, it's the engineering, it's not the language. If you use a good engineering, your software is gonna be, sorry for my language, I should not say that, but it's gonna be fast as fuck, you know? There we go. It's gonna be always like 5 milliseconds. 5, 3, 4, 5 milliseconds. It's really fast. Okay. There we go, update. And the last one, of course, it's the delete user. How do we delete user? We just get the sorry. Delete is gonna be a post. It's gonna be a GraphQL. Let's get the API. Let's refresh it. Delete is gonna be the last one. So we're just gonna get all this information. Delete. I don't need none of these. I just need to pass the deleted as a through. When I do that, I'm going to delete the user. I'm going to receive a null back, of course, because the user now is deleted. If I try to list the user, I don't have a user. But if I try to list the users, all right, passing a deleted as true, it's gonna give me back that. And there is an deleted is true. Got it?
Got it. Nice.
So,
nice.
I believe that we have everything that we need about users. In the next session, what we're gonna do in the next session, what we're gonna do, we're gonna improve it because, for example, one of the things that, let me just pause it. One of the things that we have, if we go to the database, we have the approval token that's not here yet. The password, it's not encrypted, so we're going to encrypt these passwords. We're going to create the approval token, and we will use a email provider to send an email for somebody with the user information. Okay? So let's
Okay.
get this, and I'm going to raid Daniel Hart. Let's raid the channel of this guy because he's a real good one. And let's well, let's start the hate. Everyone, thank you very much. See you in the next Tuesday. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we will be here working with you. See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See you in the next time.
See you, Bruno. Thank you very much for being
See you.
here all this time. Well, we work together, so I'm gonna see you again tomorrow. But let's see you again in the next season or else. I hope that you're liking. I don't know if you're liking, but I really
Yes, of
hope
course.
that you like.
I'm like a little tired today,
Yeah.
but I'm liking a lot.
Yeah, we are working
because
really
we
hard, and we still
of
come here to pass all this knowledge for
yeah
you guys. So thank you, Bruno. Thank you for everything that you've done.